Good morning, y'all. It's Thursday, y'all, the 10th of October, so it's 10/10/2024. I hope you are having a good week so far, and I hope you were able to attend a Bible believing preaching church last night. And if you have friends or family in Tampa and St. Pete and Bradenton area, please check on them. That hurricane made landfall at 8:30 last night and unleashed. And before it even made full landfall, so hurricane making landfall is when the eye of the hurricane actually touches land. That's how they gauge it making landfall. The outer bands close to Iowa were on land for hours yesterday, and so there were numerous tornadoes in Tampa and St. Pete and those areas there yesterday. I think a total 17 confirmed tornadoes. One of them was a wedge tornado, which is one of the largest type of tornadoes that can be out there. Those can be anywhere between a quarter of a mile wide to a mile or even 2 mile wide tornadoes. And there was a wedge tornado yesterday that touched down. So there was damage, catastrophic damage, even before the eye wall made landfall yesterday. So just be in prayer for people in Florida and just pray that they would seek and turn after God after this. So anyway, and I hope last night, if you were able to attend a Bible believing, preaching, teaching church, that you did. As always, if you are in an area that doesn't have a church, a Bible believing, preaching, teaching church, you're more than welcome to watch our services online. That is Liberty Baptist Church of Ada. We stream them on Facebook and also on YouTube. Now, there are some times when we have our sound system guys are not there and we don't stream. If that's the case, there's a good church you can watch online too. If you're not able to attend this is only if you cannot absolutely attend church. You can stream either our church, Liberty Baptist Church of Ada, or Bible Believers Baptist Church of Jacksonville, Florida, of which they're getting storm surge this morning. So, but it's best for you to be in a church that you can be a part of. Our services last night, Brother Dave Drake preached and taught, and you should go back and watch it. It's really good. The importance of the local church. He covers a lot of information. Dave's a great teacher, and he had some great thoughts on things last night. It was good. I'm going to go back and watch it again. That's how good it was. So a lot of good information. And it's all about the local church and why you need to be in a local church, a local Bible believing and preaching and teaching church. All right, that being said, if you look at the introduction here, we are still going to stay in Acts. We're actually going to go to partly to Acts chapter 19 because of the end of Acts 18 here. Apollos shows up, and Apollos has part to do with the Corinthian church. So we're going to go through into part of Acts 19 so we can see, because Paul brings up Apollos in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, talking about people worried about who they're baptized, whether of Paul or Apollos or somebody or Cephas, Peter. There's a disputing about who got baptized by who. And Apollos was in that name drop of people. They were saying, well, I was baptized of Apollos, and I was baptized of Paul, and I was baptized of Cephas. And Paul made an expression that it doesn't matter who baptized you. Baptism is not the important thing that you need to worry about. It's your salvation. Now, baptism is important. It is a representation of your inward salvation, but that's all it is. It's just a representation. I don't believe that you should not be baptized. I believe you should be baptized, scripturally baptized, as in the representation of the death, how you died to your old self, you were buried, and you rose again, just how Christ died and was buried and rose again. So if people think that I'm against baptism, I'm not. But it's more important that a person gets saved and has a relationship with Christ. But a step of growth as part of your sanctification is to be scripturally baptized. Anyway, back to this. So we are seeing now Acts chapter 17. We'll pick back up in verse 18, which is what we closed at yesterday. And Paul, after this, tarried there yet a good while, and then took his leave of the brethren, and sailed thence into Syria, and with him Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Centuria, for he had a vow. And he came to Ephesus and left them there, but he himself entered into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. Even though Paul said in Acts chapter 18, verse 6, I'm done with you. I'm going to go straight to the Gentiles. Here he is. He goes to Ephesus. I told you, he ends up going back to them. And that's part of Paul's problem in his ministry. God clearly wanted him to go to the Gentiles, but he had a love for his brothers, his kinfolk, his Jews, and he wanted to see them get saved. When in verse 20 here, and when they desired him to tarry longer time with them, he consented not. He said, nope, I can't. I got to go. But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep the feast that cometh in Jerusalem. But I will return again unto you, if God will. And he sailed from Ephesus. And when he had landed at Caesarea and gone up and saluted the church, he went down to Antioch. So he's returning to the home base, the mission home, Antioch. Verse 23, and after he had spent some time there, he departed and went over all the country of Galatia and Phrygia in order, strengthening all the disciples. So now on this third missionary trip, he's going back around to everybody he was at and making some new converts along the way, but he was strengthening the brethren. Those that have accepted Christ, started churches, he was going back and strengthening them. So he went to Antioch and then he went back around. Now, verse 24, here's Apollos showing up. And a certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man and mighty in scriptures, came to Ephesus. This man was instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in the Spirit, he spake and taught diligently the things of the Lord, knowing only the baptism of John. So here's Apollos, and you might say he is a disciple of John the Baptist. He shows up and he's preaching in Ephesus. Now, what is he preaching? He's preaching the baptism of John. What was John's baptism? It was different than what our baptism is now. John's baptism, as we studied out there in Matthew chapter 3:11 and 12, John's baptism was to prepare the Jews for their Messiah. So when Apollos was coming through and preaching, that's what he was preaching. He was preaching the coming Messiah. He wasn't preaching that he was already there and that he had died for their sins and that he rose again, because it says here, he knew, knowing only the baptism of John. So that's all Apollos was teaching. Verse 26, and he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, whom when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him unto them and expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. So what Aquila and Priscilla were preaching to him and teaching to him was Christ and him crucified. That is the way of God more perfectly. Because remember, he's preaching John's baptism, the preparing for the Messiah. He didn't understand that the Messiah was there. They had rejected him and crucified him. For whatever reason, that's all he was preaching, was the Messiah. Now, this is important because remember in Acts chapter 1 through 7, the apostles, all the way up to Stephen, the disciple, were preaching the soon return of Christ as Messiah. He came as the Savior. Now he's going to come back as Messiah. So you have Apollos now. He's just preaching the arrival of the Messiah. That's what John's baptism was about. Repenting and being baptized for the remission of their sins. Because why? Getting cleaned up and getting washed up because their Messiah was coming. That's what Apollos was preaching. And here's Aquila and Priscilla. They had to straighten them out. How did they straighten them out? Well, Apollos ends up getting saved. And when he was disposed to pass into Achaia, the brethren wrote, exhorting the disciples to receive him, who, when he was come, helped them much which had believed through grace. Now, it doesn't exactly say his conversion, but by what Aquila and Priscilla were teaching him, that would be he had gotten saved. They preached unto the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ. Just how they had gotten saved. And then, once he did that, he started preaching to and helping those that believed in grace. Verse 28, For he mightily convinced the Jews, and that publicly, showing by the scriptures that Jesus was Christ. So now he went from preaching John's baptism to starting preaching the gospel. And tomorrow, when we get into Acts chapter 19, there's going to be something interesting that happens with him. All right. So that's all I got for you today. We're at the 10-minute mark. Don't want to go any further. I hope you have a good day. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.